Some marriages don't begin with love but with fear. Ken and Natalie built a home on the quicksand of panic, and when the storms of life hit, we didn't crumble because love ran out, but because we no longer had the strength to recover from a mistake made right from the start. Hey everyone, how are you all doing these days? Is work going well? I hope that no matter how busy life gets, you always find peace in your soul and never stop listening to your inner voice. Today I want to tell you a story, a belated confession, and perhaps a costly lesson I paid for with years of my youth and a piece of my heart. This isn't a story about a love shattered by betrayal or by simply drifting apart. This is a story about a marriage that began with a mistake, grew over time, and eventually neither of us had the strength to pick up the pieces. I want to tell you this because who knows? Maybe somewhere out there are people standing at the threshold of a major decision, all because of a moment of panic and invisible fear. Listen to my story so you can pause, reflect, and be braver than I once was, so you don't have to follow the same path I did. It all started with 2 red lines on a pregnancy test, with a hasty proposal, and with a lie we wove for ourselves. Natalie and we met at a lively bar in Austin, Texas. She was the bartender with caramel curly hair and a smile that always radiated, mixing colorful cocktails. I, a freelance programmer, often went there after stressful working hours, looking for a little relaxation and some fun conversations. Initially, we were just friends. Then came morning coffees, late-night talks about everything under the sun, from rock music and horror films to wild dreams of a free, unburdened future. Love came to us gently like a breeze, as natural as breathing. Natalie brought me freshness, joy, and a free-spiritedness. She never forced me into any mold, nor did she demand that I change anything. And me, I found a kindred spirit in her, someone who could wander with me on unnamed roads, dream the wildest dreams with me. We were a modern couple, not overcomplicating marriage or traditional commitments. We loved living freely, enjoyed evenings gathered with friends, spontaneous road trips, and moments just the two of us laughing joyfully in the small apartment we rented in downtown Austin. We lived together, no wedding date set, not thinking much about the distant future. Just let things happen naturally, honey, Natalie used to say. Let's just love each other and be happy. I completely agreed. Our life was like a jazz tune, improvisational and full of life. Until that fateful morning. It was a Saturday morning, the Austin sky was clear and sunny, but our apartment was enveloped in a thick atmosphere of tension. Natalie stood in the bathroom trembling, holding a pregnancy test. I stood leaning against the door, my heart pounding as if it wanted to leap out of my chest. We didn't say a word, just stared at the 2 red lines slowly appearing on the test stick. 2 lines like 2 sharp blades tore through the curtain of carefree living, of the free dreams we were weaving. Natalie didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't make a fuss. She just looked at me, her eyes neither accusing nor fearful. It was just an empty, unfocused gaze, as if waiting for some signal from me, an answer for both our lives. And I, in that moment of extreme panic, with my mind blank and my heart racing, said the first thing that came out of my mouth, a sentence not born of love but of an immense fear: "I'll take responsibility. Let's get married." The first secret of this marriage was forged right then. It wasn't a proposal born of intense love or a desire for lifelong commitment, but a spontaneous act, a promise uttered in panic and the pressure of responsibility. I wasn't brave enough to face the truth, calm enough to think things through. I just wanted to escape the guilt and helplessness that surrounded me. I thought marriage was the only way to take responsibility, to solve the problem. Natalie said nothing. She just nodded. A very slight nod, but I knew it was heavy with unspoken things. As if it was the right thing to do. As if it was the only option either of us in that moment could see. But deep down, I knew we were both deceiving ourselves. We chose a path not because we wanted to walk it together, but because we dared not face other turns. My hasty proposal pushed everything into a rapid, urgent whirlwind. We didn't have time to think, to prepare, or to truly feel the meaning of a marriage. Everything happened like a storm. We had a small, simple, rushed wedding, more of a confirmation of responsibility than a celebration of love. There was no elaborate white dress Natalie had dreamed of, no songs we loved, no first dance as husband and wife. There was just Natalie in a simple wedding dress I saw her buy in a hurry, her face pale from morning sickness and the worried, questioning glances from both our families. My parents, despite trying to appear happy, I knew they were still surprised and a little let down. And Natalie's family, they were traditional people, relieved in a way that their daughter had a place, but they couldn't hide their disappointment about how everything had unfolded. I tried to smile, a forced smile that made my jaw ache. Natalie also tried to be strong, tried to maintain composure in front of everyone. But between us, there wasn't the kind of emotion a wedding should have: no overwhelming joy, no eager anticipation, no voluntary delight. Instead, there was a heavy atmosphere of anxiety, of unspoken questions, and an invisible fear weighing on every breath we took. We didn't marry for love. We married out of fear. Fear of social judgment, fear of our family's reactions, fear of parenthood for which we were completely unprepared. That was the second secret, a bitter truth we tried to bury deep inside, daring not to face it. The more we tried to hide it, the bigger that secret grew, like an invisible wall separating us. Our married life began like that, on an unstable foundation. We still lived in our small apartment in Austin, still kept our old habits, but everything was different. The late-night talks were gone, replaced by heavy silence. Spontaneous outings disappeared, replaced by prenatal appointments, birthing classes. I was still a programmer, she was still a bartender, but now on our shoulders was an invisible burden called family and responsibility, and uncertain future. I felt like I was acting in a play, a role whose lines I didn't know. I had to learn to be a husband, a father, while I was still a young man struggling with my own life. Natalie was the same. She went from a free-spirited, vibrant girl to a wife and expectant mother in an instant. The invisible pressure from both families, from society, from ourselves, weighed heavier every day, every hour. We were still together, but each of us was a lonely island trying to brace ourselves against the big wave called truth. We didn't say it aloud, but we both knew this marriage was not the beginning of happiness, but the continuation of a mistake. The romance we once had was buried under nameless burdens, under the pressure of forced pretense. It didn't die because love ran out, but was suffocated by what we had imposed on ourselves. The day the baby was born, it was a sunny morning, but my soul was steeped in darkness. I stood beside Natalie in the delivery room, watching the tiny red crying angel in her arms. I looked at our child and I cried too. Not from overwhelming joy, not from the emotion of a father holding his child for the first time, but because I was afraid. Terribly afraid. I was afraid of responsibility, afraid I wasn't good enough, afraid I wasn't mature enough to be a father. In that moment, looking at my child, I realized a heartbreaking truth. I was still a boy, a man who hadn't grown up, hadn't yet shaped his own life. Yet now I had become the pillar of a small family. That fear was the third secret gnawing at me from within. I tried to hide it, tried to appear strong, but deep down I knew I was helpless. Life after having a child was a chaotic mess I couldn't have imagined. Long sleepless nights from the baby crying, exhausting mornings from lack of sleep, petty arguments about who would change diapers, who would soothe the baby. I didn't know how to change diapers. I didn't know how to soothe a crying baby. The baby's cries, Natalie's exhausted, irritable cries, crying alone in the bathroom, it all suffocated me. Natalie went from a cheerful, energetic girl to a constantly tired mother with dark circles under her eyes and a rare smile. She had to bear almost everything, from caring for the child, managing the house, to trying to balance her own emotions. I felt useless, felt helpless, and guilt weighed heavily on my shoulders. That guilt grew day by day. I knew Natalie was suffering too much, but I didn't know what to do to help her. I didn't know how to share the burden, how to comfort her, and even I felt uncomfortable having to face her negative emotions. I often hid in my office pretending to focus on code, but in reality I sat there staring at the computer screen, my mind blank, hearing the baby's cries echo from the living room. Instead of facing the truth, facing my own fears, I chose to run away. To escape that feeling, I worked more. It was a perfect excuse. I have to stay late at the office. I have an urgent meeting. I need to go on a business trip for a few days. I took on more projects, buried myself in lines of code, hid out at my usual coffee shop until late at night before coming home. I tried to turn myself into a busy, successful man, to deceive myself and Natalie that I was doing it all for the family. But in reality, I was running away. I was running from responsibility, running from my child's cries, running from Natalie's disappointed gaze, and running from my own helpless self. Late at night, I often sat alone in the living room, looking out at the glittering lights of Austin City. I wondered, was this the life I had once dreamed of? Was this the person I wanted to become? The answer was always a heavy silence. I had lost my freedom, my carefree spirit, and in its place was a nameless burden, a forced life. Natalie was the same. From a free-spirited girl, she was now bound by the responsibilities of motherhood, by a marriage she never truly wanted. Both of us were slowly drowning in loneliness despite living under the same roof. I felt like I was trapped in a silent storm. No thunder or lightning, no heavy rain, but one that eroded my soul day by day. We were no longer a couple. We were two people enduring a wrong decision together. We lived side by side under the same roof, but the distance between us grew larger. Our conversations became fewer, just terse questions about the kids, about bills, about mundane things. I no longer shared my work pressures with her, and she no longer told me about the struggles of raising our child. I felt myself slowly becoming a stranger, a shadow of my former self, a man who had lost his joy and passion. And I knew Natalie felt the same way. Our marriage, instead of being a peaceful haven, had become a prison where both of us struggled to escape the invisible burden we had placed upon ourselves. The silence kept growing, gnawing at our relationship bit by bit. We still lived under the same roof, still took care of our child, but between us was an invisible wall built with unspoken lies and fears that were never resolved. I buried myself in work, seeking peace in lines of code and late-night meetings. Natalie immersed herself in caring for our child, isolating herself from the outside world, and I saw her wither and dry up more and more. In the evenings when our son David was fast asleep, Natalie often sat alone in the living room, staring into empty space. I knew what she was thinking, what she was feeling, but I wasn't brave enough to ask, not strong enough to confront it. I pretended to be busy with my laptop, pretended not to notice her sad eyes. I was afraid of confrontation, afraid of words that could tear apart the elaborate facade we had built. I was afraid of the moment when we would have to face the naked truth. We were stuck and no one knew what to do. We didn't have loud arguments, no fierce disputes. Everything just simmered like a small flame burning internally, waiting for a spark to ignite. And that spark, it came. One evening after our son was asleep, Natalie sat across from me on the living room sofa. The air was leaden. She looked at me, her eyes no longer showing tiredness or despair, but a frightening stillness, as if she had endured enough. Her voice was soft but sharp, cold, and pierced straight into my heart. "You don't love me anymore, do you?" My heart instantly constricted. My whole body froze. Thousands of thoughts, thousands of excuses, apologies, promises swirled in my head. I wanted to say, "That's not true. I still love you." I wanted to say, "I used to love you. I still care for you. I'm just tired. I'm lost. I'm afraid. I don't know how to get out of this mess." I wanted to tell her about my fears, about the burden I was carrying, about how I was slowly losing myself. I wanted her to understand that I was also suffering. I was also desperate, no less than she was. But then a cruel and painful truth suddenly became clear in my mind, sharp as a knife. I knew I was lying. Maybe I cared for her once, liked her once, was close to her during those carefree months. But love, that intense, burning love, that desire for a lifelong bond of a husband for his wife, it had died a long time ago, perhaps, right from that fateful morning of the 2 lines. I had never truly loved her in the way a marriage needs, a love born of willingness, of understanding, and a desire to share one's entire life. And I knew she knew it too. She didn't need me to confirm it. Her eyes weren't begging for an excuse or a lie. She just needed someone to admit that all of this was because we were afraid, not because of love. Natalie's question was the 4th secret, revealed a truth we had both tried to avoid, a truth that had gnawed at our relationship from within. I remained silent, a silence that stretched on endlessly, longer than any argument. No answer. Just my gaze, a gaze full of helplessness, regret, and bitter acceptance. Natalie understood. She closed her eyes, a silent tear rolling down her cheek. That tear wasn't weakness, it was liberation. Liberation for both of us from the burden of pretense of a marriage built on fear. This argument had no shouting, no accusations. It was just a dialogue of silence and acknowledgement that everything was over, that there was nothing left to hold on to. It was our first argument and also our last. We were no longer a couple and had never truly been a couple in the true sense of the word, husband and wife. After that fateful night, everything unfolded strangely, unexpectedly, gently. There were no arguments, no struggles, no tears or clinging. It was as if we were both too tired, too exhausted to continue carrying a burden that didn't belong to us. The truth had been exposed, and now all that remained was acceptance. We sat together, not on the familiar sofa where I had uttered my hasty proposal, but in a lawyer's office with divorce papers on the table. Both of us seemed strangely calm. I looked at Natalie. She was thinner than before, her eyes still a little dark, but her face radiated a sense of relief, as if an invisible burden had just been lifted. Perhaps she had endured this pain longer than I thought, and this decision was also a liberation for her. We communicated with the lawyer clearly and concisely. No custody battle. We agreed to co-parent our son. He would stay with Natalie, and I would have frequent visitation rights, the right to pick him up from school and participate in extracurricular activities. No property dispute. Whatever we gained after marriage would be split equally, and we didn't have much to dispute anyway. No blaming each other. Not a single word of accusation was uttered. It was as if we both understood that no one was entirely at fault here, or that both of us were at fault for not bravely facing the truth from the very beginning. We were just 2 young, carefree people who got caught up in a hasty decision, pushed into a marriage neither of us was ready for. We tried. We tried to hold on, tried to live a script that wasn't our own for 3 years. And now when nothing could be salvaged, divorce became a liberation, a way out for both of us from the invisible burden we had carried for so long. On the last day, Natalie left the apartment where we had once shared joyful moments and then sunken into the silence of a fake marriage. She had packed her belongings, leaving behind only a few personal items. David was playing with toys in his room, completely unaware of this separation. Natalie stood at the door, turned back to look at me. Her eyes held something distant, as if looking back at the entire journey that had passed. She hugged me, a very light hug but full of understanding and a touch of regret. Regret for a wrong beginning, regret for a story that could have been different. "Thank you," Natalie said softly, her voice free of any resentment, only a strange calmness. "For at least we tried." My heart clenched. A churning sensation rose in my chest. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Sorry for putting you in this situation. Sorry for not being brave enough to tell the truth from the start. Sorry for not truly loving you the way you deserve to be loved. I wanted to ask her if she regretted it. Did she wish things had been different? Was there any way to turn back time so we could start over in a better way? But all those questions just caught in my throat. I couldn't utter a word. I could only reply a response filled with so much regret and bitterness, a confession of my cowardice. "I'm sorry for not being brave enough to say, we're not ready." That was my confession. A confession of the cowardice of a man who let fear dominate his life, dominate the life of the woman he once cared for. I wasn't brave enough to face the truth, to say that a child cannot be the only reason for a marriage. I wasn't brave enough to say that we needed time. We needed to grow up. We needed real love, not a hasty promise. Our divorce, it wasn't a painful ending, but a heartbreaking liberation. We freed each other from a trap we had both walked into. We didn't fail at love. We failed at facing the truth, failed at living authentically from the very first moments. And that was the fifth secret revealed. This divorce wasn't the end of a love, but the end of a series of mistakes built on fear. It was an admission that no matter how hard you try, some things cannot be salvaged if the foundation is flawed. From the wreckage of that marriage, a new opportunity opened for both of us, an opportunity to be reborn, to find ourselves again. After the divorce, I returned to the old apartment, the place that had witnessed our free love and then the suffocation of our marriage. The room seemed larger, emptier. No more Natalie's laughter, no more our child's cries, only a terrifying silence. I had regained my freedom, the freedom I had so desperately longed for, but now it tasted bitter. I wondered, was this what I truly wanted, or was I just running from one prison to another, a prison of loneliness and regret? I missed my son terribly. David still lived with Natalie, and I visited him regularly. Every time I saw him, my heart ached. He was growing up so fast, and I saw his innocence and purity while also feeling like an incomplete father. I couldn't give him a complete family, a home with both his mom and dad by his side every day. This is the biggest regret of my life. I wish I had been mature enough to make a better decision so my son wouldn't have to suffer the consequences of his parents' cowardice. That nagging regret haunted me, turning into strange dreams where I ran endlessly on a road with no escape, with my child's cries echoing in my ears. I tried to explain it to him in the simplest way possible. "Mommy and Daddy don't live together anymore, but we still love David very much. Daddy and Mommy will always be there for you." I knew my son was too young to fully understand the complexities of adults. He simply accepted it, but his eyes occasionally showed a hint of sadness, a question mark whenever I left after a visit. I can only hope that with genuine love and care, I can somehow make up for the shortcomings that my wrong decision caused him. I told myself that even if we didn't live together, I still had to be a good father, a responsible father who was always present in his life. I wanted him to understand that sometimes authenticity, even if painful, is better than a sweet lie. I started seeking balance. I no longer buried myself in work to escape reality. I spent time on myself, on old hobbies, but no longer with the carefree spirit of before. Now I had a greater responsibility, the responsibility of a father. I learned how to change diapers, how to mix formula, how to soothe a baby to sleep. I tried to be the best father I could be, not out of fear, but out of genuine love for David. I wanted him to be proud of me, not for who I was, but because I was brave enough to face my mistakes and try to correct them. The cost of my initial cowardice was a broken marriage, but the more expensive price was the regret in my son's eyes. I realized the final secret of this story isn't about our divorce, but the profound lesson of maturity. Maturity isn't about avoiding responsibility, but about bravely facing it even if it stems from a mistake. It's about recognizing your flaws, accepting them, and striving to become a better version of yourself for the people you love. This path isn't easy, but it's the only one that leads to true peace. Many nights I sat alone in my empty apartment, looking out at the glittering lights of Austin City. I wondered, is Natalie happier now? Has she found the peace she deserves? I hope so. I also wondered if I could find a new love where love and maturity go hand in hand. I don't know, and I'm no longer rushing to find the answer. I understand that before I can love someone completely, I have to learn to love and accept myself. Life after divorce wasn't a miracle that turned everything rosy immediately. It was a process. A difficult process full of long nights tossing and turning, thinking about what had happened, what could have been different. But it was also a process of healing, of growth, and of finding myself again. With each passing day, I felt like I was picking up the shattered pieces of myself and putting them back together into a new person, more resilient, more understanding. I began to rebuild my life slowly, one step at a time. I learned to face my emotions, no longer avoiding or burying myself in work. I sought out a therapist, and that was a good decision I should have made sooner. She helped me re-examine the entire story, from that fateful night with the 2 lines on the test to the hasty proposal, the forced marriage, and finally the liberation of the divorce. She didn't judge, just listened and helped me untangle each knot in my heart. She helped me understand that no one is perfect and mistakes are a part of life. What matters is how we face those mistakes, learn from them, and grow. Regret isn't for tormenting yourself, Ken, she said. It's for you to learn something and not repeat it again. Those words changed my perspective on everything. I realized I had been very cowardly. Cowardly for not daring to face a difficult truth, cowardly for not daring to say, "We're not ready," and cowardly for avoiding responsibility by burying myself in work. But the pain of losing myself, the regret of seeing Natalie's exhaustion, and especially the torment of not being able to give my son a complete family forced me to change. I couldn't continue living a lie, couldn't continue running. I had to face it, and I had to heal. I spent more time with my son David. He was my light, my greatest motivation. I read books to him, played with him, took him to the park, told him the stories I had always dreamed of telling. I tried to be a friend, a father he could trust. I wanted him to understand that love doesn't always need a title or a framework. It can exist in many different forms as long as it's genuine and comes from the heart. Natalie and I were no longer husband and wife, but we are still David's parents, and that's what matters most. We still communicate, discuss our son, and gradually our relationship became more harmonious and respectful without the forced pretense or tension of before. I still work as a freelance programmer, but now work is no longer a place for me to escape. It's a place for me to develop myself, a source of income, for me to take care of my son and build a new life. I learned to balance work and personal life, responsibility and freedom. I learned that happiness isn't about having everything you want, but about appreciating what you have and living true to yourself. I also started participating in community activities, connecting with new friends, and gradually I felt like I was the Ken of old, but a more mature, stronger, and more authentic Ken. I don't know where the future will take me. Maybe I'll find a new love. A woman who can accept the real me, accept both the scars and the lessons from the past. Or maybe I'll choose a single life, dedicating all my time and love to my son. Either way, I know one thing for sure: I will never repeat my mistake again. I will never let fear dictate major life decisions. I will live true to myself, to the values I believe in, because I've learned that loving yourself, respecting your true self, is the foundation for all true love and happiness. I believe that when I live authentically, peace and happiness will find me. I still remember Natalie's first glance, her radiant smile. It's a beautiful memory, an indispensable part of my life. But I also remember the feeling of losing myself, the feeling of being trapped in a life that wasn't mine. And that lesson, that pain, has helped me grow so much. It taught me that love is truly complete only when you don't have to sacrifice yourself to get it. My marriage to Natalie is a vivid testament to the fact that sometimes letting go is the best way to find liberation and allow both parties an opportunity to seek true happiness. No one is entirely at fault. We were just young people who took a hasty step, but from that mistake, we learned the most valuable lesson about maturity and courage. I was reborn not from ashes, but from the very broken pieces of my life. The road ahead may still be challenging, but I believe in myself, and I believe in the power of authenticity. If you are listening to this story, and you are standing at a major turning point in your life, a decision that could change everything, simply because of fear and invisible pressure from society, from family, or from yourself, please just pause for a moment. Take a moment to listen to your inner voice, the voice of your heart and reason. Ask yourself the most important question, a question I wish I had asked myself sooner. Am I doing this out of genuine love, or out of fear, out of imposed responsibility, out of a desire to please others, or because I don't dare to face a difficult truth? Because marrying out of fear, marrying out of unspoken responsibility, or out of haste is like building a house on sand. That house may look beautiful and strong. On the outside, it may be praised by everyone, but its foundation is weak, easily collapsing in the storms of life. You may try to hold on. Try to play a role that isn't yours. Try to cover up the deep cracks within. But one day you will be exhausted and everything will shatter more painfully than you can imagine. True love doesn't demand that you give up yourself. It doesn't force you to change your core nature to fit some mold. A happy marriage isn't built on lies or fear. It's built on authenticity, understanding, mutual respect, willingness, and a love strong enough to overcome all the difficulties and challenges life throws your way. Don't let fear steal your true happiness, steal your chance to be yourself. Be brave enough to face the truth. Be brave enough to speak what you truly want, because only when you live true to yourself can you find true peace and complete happiness, a lasting and authentic happiness. Remember, a hasty decision might bring temporary relief, but the price could be a lifetime of regret and scars that never heal. Choose to live true to yourself even if it means going against the crowd, because peace of mind is the most valuable thing. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope that these shared experiences, though perhaps painful, will bring some reflection, a little motivation for anyone standing at difficult crossroads in their own lives. Life is a continuous learning journey, and sometimes our biggest mistakes bring the most valuable lessons. Please leave your comments below. Share your thoughts on this story. Don't forget to hit the like button. If you found this story meaningful, share this video to spread reflections on love, betrayal, and the journey of healing, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next emotional stories and profound lessons. Thank you for listening to my story. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.